What is going on, every nation? John Impemba here with Howard Bender. Welcome to the Fantasy Alarm NFL DFS show. It is week 5 of the NFL season, Bender. We've hit some bye weeks. We've hit London games. We have a 10-game main slate this week, our shortest main slate so far of the season. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. 11 games if you're playing on FanDuel. I mean, for love it or hate it, they still have that Sunday night football game on their main slate. So always nice to have that extra little push over there. I know we spend a lot of time focusing on DraftKings, but keep in mind that as we go through position by position, we're going to start talking a little bit and throw down some Cowboys and some Steelers. That you might be interested in. I always like getting a little slice of that late game when I'm playing on FanDuel, because there are a lot of people who overload, like who load up on the early games. There are a lot of people who just stick with that main area, and then they go into the Sunday night game and they can't understand why all of a sudden they started losing their spot in the standings.
Yeah,
because somebody had, Khalil Shakir last week.
Derrick Henry running for 200 yards.
Derrick Henry running for 200 yards. Exactly.
Yeah. No, 100%. Get that late night hammer exposure over on FanDuel. We talk a lot about that, obviously, in the DFS streets here. But yeah, we obviously we're focusing on the DraftKings. Yeah, we'll talk some Cowboys and some Steelers as we hit some positions here. Again, with it being just 10 games, you did your watch list, you did a contrarian and bargain videos this week. I'll have the playbook out. I've done the quarterback coach. Everything is out for all of you to prepare for your week 5 DFS contest here. Starting off at the quarterback position, you got Josh Allen, you got Lamar Jackson, you got CJ Stroud. Those are your top 3 price quarterbacks in the 7K range. Lamar Jackson's been, one of the most consistent quarterbacks in DFS this season. He's on the road in Cincinnati, a bad defense there. Is Lamar your QB1 this week in terms of top spends, or are you looking more at the Allen Stroud matchups?
I mean, I think the Allen Stroud matchup's actually going to be a really good one, just because I think that game can go either way. We'll see what happens if Joe Mixon is back, because you want to run on Buffalo, which might take some of the pressure off of CJ Stroud. But again, when you're looking at a matchup here like they have Josh Allen with that rushing upside that CJ Stroud doesn't have, that's great. Now the question is when you're looking at Lamar Jackson, is it a Derrick Henry game? The Mark Andrews crowd that is still crying because they drafted Mark Andrews in their season-long leagues. And they're like, well, he's not being used. He's not being used. And, it was fact of the matter, why use him if you're going to run the football? That's why you got Derrick Henry. And I think that, in a game where Derrick Henry is going to run for however many yards he's going to run for on Seattle, the question is does that hurt Lamar Jackson with his own personal numbers to the point where you're like, why am I going to spend up for the second highest priced quarterback here if it's not going to result in, some of the same things, right? He hasn't had a rushing touchdown now in 2 games?
Lamar, no, he has rushing touchdowns each of the last 2.
Does he have rushing in the last 2? Or
Buffalo and Dallas, yeah.
Okay. All right. So then, maybe that's the way to do it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I look at that. What is that? I'm looking at the screen right now where you got up 156 yards passing, 182 yards passing, a couple of touchdowns. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for making that. I forgot. I'm dealing with the old eyes here. Okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
so, I mean, I guess, yeah. So, I mean, if you're looking at like a soft run defense, you can get, Lamar in there. You don't have to expect too much in the passing front. You're going to get your rushing yards.
Yeah, listen, you don't love a quarterback that's throwing 18 and 15 times, right? He has to be incredibly efficient, which he has been, 72 and 80% passing. Touchdown passes, at least 1 in every game. You definitely need that if you're not going to throw for volume and for volume of yards. And yeah, obviously the rushing upside gives him the floor. He ran for 122 on opening night, 45, 87 in a score, 54 in a score. I agree with you. Derrick Henry is also, and we'll get to the running backs, he's my number 1 running back play of the week. It's very difficult to want to stack the quarterback and the running back on the same team because there's almost zero correlation. When I say almost, like very almost non-existent correlation. It's not like Derrick Henry's Alvin Kamara here, to impact the game. But, if it doesn't end up going Derrick Henry with the 150 and 2 scores, Lamar could have himself a day. Plus, the Cincinnati Bengals offense is actually clicking a little bit right now. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. So they could put some offensive pressure with them being at home. Baltimore blowing out Buffalo in their own, in Baltimore in that game. This could be forcing Lamar to have to throw a bit more if this turns into, the Bengals offense being able to put some points on the board. So I like Lamar here. I also like Stroud. Nico Collins continues to just be an absolute monster. Then you have the Stephon Diggs, obviously revenge game narrative in play here. Easy to play Stroud at home. It's where he had a lot of success last season. The splits for Stroud at home versus splits on the road were very apparent. This year, sort of trending-ish in a similar direction. His highest game of the year last week was at home against Jacksonville. So I'm fine with both of those. My problem with Allen is I don't know. It's Shakir or it's Coleman, but you don't really feel confident in either of them. You could do Kincaid, but to me, it's almost like you almost want to play him naked almost because you
always want to play him naked. There's what's wrong with playing him naked, right? I mean, we've played him naked before. We played Justin Fields naked last week. I mean, if you don't need to, like if you can't figure out like where he's going to go with the foot, it's like Patrick Mahomes. I don't know where he's going to go with the football, but I'll tell you what. I wouldn't be adverse to using Patrick Mahomes. I mean, not that he's on this slate, but what I'm saying is like using him naked. I'm fine using Josh Allen naked. He's got that rushing upside as well that kind of helps that along. So I'm fine there. Are you spending up? Like, is that you're the QB coach? Are you more inclined?
I'm not. I'm the quarterback coach. You can go check that out, obviously, over at Fantasy Alarm, but I can't hide from who the cover of the quarterback coach is, and that's Geno Smith. He is my quarterback play of the week. He's $5,900 on DraftKings. I believe he's a little bit more expensive on FanDuel, but like not among the top price guys over there. But still, you're looking at a guy. The Seattle Seahawks lead the NFL in passing yards per game, which we talked about the new offensive coordinator, right? Like he was going to go in there and he was going to push the ball downfield. Home versus the Giants. Geno's only $5,900. I was tilted by the fact that he's still only thrown one touchdown in each game because I bet the over 1.5. And I mean, they tried to get him the second touchdown in that last game against Detroit. He threw for enough yards and enough attempts in the end zone, but wasn't able to complete that. I like Geno a lot here. They're going to throw, and I know the Giants could be without Malik Neighbors, and that's going to certainly hurt them a little bit more there in terms of maybe a back and forth style of game you want to see here. But if we're going down, I like Geno Smith at 59. In the mid-tier, though, Jordan Love at 65, I think is in a really great spot. I do like Joe Burrow on the other side. If you want to stack Burrow, Jamar Chase, or T. Higgins and come back with a Derrick Henry in that game or something like that, I think that works out well. What are your thoughts on Jaden Daniels this week? Obviously now second straight week and 86% completion percentage. I mean, we didn't know this guy could throw the football. He can, and he is doing it very well. So what are your thoughts with him returning?
Things are looking very, very good. You also have to take into account the schedule that he's had over the last 3 weeks. That has not been a very tough schedule at all. And so this is going to be an interesting test for him against the Cleveland defense, because I think Myles Garrett's going to be back and they've got a decent secondary. I think Cleveland kind of shoots themselves in the foot on the regular basis. And I think Washington ultimately wins this game. But, the question that I really want to, I have there, I mean, again, I was a heated battle with Jim Bowden yesterday on the Fantasy Alarm show. Because I said Jaden Daniels is like my ideal sell high candidate, because his value is never going to be as high as it is right now, because people are saying that he's going to be the MVP of the league. And as soon as people start saying that a rookie's going to be the MVP of the league 4 games in, that's a red flag for me. That's a pump the brakes kind of a moment and just say, you know what, let's see how he does against some tougher defenses. This is going to be an interesting matchup for him. I think he's going to be very chalky this week. And as a result of that, I'll probably not use him and just see where the chips may fall. I might actually just take Washington in my survivor pool because I just think Cleveland is just that bad. But, again, I like what Jaden Daniels is doing. I'm not ready to hoist him onto my shoulders and say he's the greatest quarterback of all time. Like, The way Jim Bowden was talking about, you'd think you were watching Chris Collinsworth call a Patrick Mahomes game. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And Jim was like, Jim's like, sell high, sell high. Why would you sell high? I'm like, yeah, because his value is at its peak right now. Even if he performs well throughout, his value is going to start going down because everybody's going to be like, well, when's the bottom going to fall out? When's the other shoe going to drop? And they're not going to give you the value that they're going to give you right now. This is like when, and I know that this isn't the forum for it, but I said to somebody, one of our subscribers, to trade Matt Olson in MLB in the offseason in a keeper league because he's coming off of a 54 home run season and everybody thinks the Braves are the be all end all. You're never going to get as much value for him as you are right now. And I'm not going to thumb my nose at 30 home run season here for Matt Olson this year, but he was massively disappointing. And so
he helped you out in maybe roto leagues because that's accountable. If you played in a head-to-head format and you had Matt Olson,
dude, even in a roto league, he was a disaster because you had to keep him in your lineup. So anyway, I don't want to get too far off the point here. All I'm saying is that I like what Jaden Daniels is doing right now. I'm not ready to anoint him as the be all end all of quarterbacks. And I think that this is it's a winnable game, but it is a little bit tougher of a matchup. So I'd probably use Kyler Murray, who's going to have to throw against San Francisco. I'll use Jordan Love, who's going up against a secondary that would probably prefer to have me play free safety for them.
Dude, I was so upset. I had Caleb Williams as one of my favorite quarterbacks last week, and then the DeAndre Swift game happened. But the Rams defense is terrible. So, I think you can probably go either way with Green Bay. And we'll talk about Big Fantasy's favorite wide receiver on this one as well, and how he's probably going to be pretty popular here. Just one last comment for me on the Daniel situation is I do like that he has performed on 3 road games. This will only be his second home game of the year. And we're not necessarily talking like Anthony Richardson, where the guy's completing 45% of his passes. He's at least being efficient throwing the football, and Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator. But on top of all that, his defense is so bad that he's almost always forced to be trying to score. Now, last week was the obvious exception to that, but his defense is going to give up points, and they're going to need him to make plays. So I agree with you, though. The chalk-wise, if you want to be a little different in tournaments, Daniels, I am less in love with Kyler Murray on the road against San Francisco. I'd much rather just play Love or Burrow, as I mentioned. I think both of those guys are fine. No interest in Anthony Richardson for me. Brock Purdy.
I like Purdy actually a lot. I think he's I think he's a good contrarian play because he's got all his weapons back. Arizona's pass defense has been atrocious. Their run defense has been atrocious too. But it's just so I like Purdy at home as a contrarian play. I like Geno Smith. You want to get super contrarian? Trevor Lawrence.
Sure.
Going up against the Colts. Maybe they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, but they still have a crap defense.
Last week in the quarterback coach, I wrote up CJ Stroud, and I basically said, if not now, when he was facing Houston and Jacksonville, he came through for us. This week, I basically did the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. I said, he's not that bad, right? If not now, then when? At home against the Colts defense, the way they've been performing, Brian Thomas Jr. is putting up fantasy points, as is Christian Kirk is putting up fantasy points. They might have Evan Ingram back this week. So, the scene is set. Can Trevor Lawrence give us the 2 touchdowns that he gave us last week, but give us more than 160 passing, right? Because I think if Joe Flacco is the quarterback this week, because that hasn't officially been ruled out for Anthony Richardson, that the Colts offense might put more pressure on this Jacksonville team, and it may be a bit of a get back and forth, type of game here, and again, I have to believe that Trevor Lawrence is better than a guy completing 54% of his passes on the year, right? Tell me that's true, So I agree with you. I really like Trevor Lawrence this week at $5,700, and I like pairing him up with his wide receivers because they're relatively cheap and they make for a good stack in their home. Flip side of that matchup, if it is Joe Flacco, hey, look what Josh Downs and Michael Pittman did, right? They got out of the graves and they became legitimate fantasy viable plays on the arm of Joe Flacco here. So if Flacco starts this week, you're going to want to play both of those guys and Flacco as well.
I can't argue against that.
I got nothing else though.
Yeah, let's move on to the running backs.
Okay. Running backs. Derrick Henry is your top guy there. I've mentioned already he's my favorite running back of the slate. If you can fit him in your lineups, think you should. You should build around him. The man's coming off of 200 yards pretty much. And what did Harbaugh say? We didn't sign Derrick Henry to give those 25 to 30 carries. Well, the last 2 weeks when they've won football games, 25 and 24 carries. I wonder if there's a correlation to that, Howard. Actually feeding Derrick Henry the football, and Baltimore starting to win some football games here. So $7,800 for him. Jonathan Taylor not practicing today, not expected to practice today as in Thursday, didn't practice Wednesday. Might not be available in this game against Jacksonville, so that's something to keep an eye on. Kyren Williams keeps scoring. Jordan Mason's super chalk this week. Where are you going when it comes to spending up?
Yeah, I mean, spending up, Henry's obviously the way to, a major way to go. I'm looking at the matchup with Kyren Williams, but again, they keep handing him the football, and he keeps getting the football inside the red zone. So, I think he's a perfectly fine. Mason, for me, I mean, even if it's, chalky, I'll use him in cash lineups and just leave him, leave him in there because, I mean, there's no reason not to, right? I mean, you can be like, oh, he doesn't catch passes like McCaffrey, but okay, fine. Then just use him on FanDuel.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me, but that's kind of where I am.
100 yards, touchdown upside. He's 35% right now, but okay. If he's going to score 27 fantasy points, you don't have him, you lose. It's it's just the way it's going to be. So I'm in on that with you there. I do also like Kenneth Walker here. As much as I mentioned liking the Seattle passing game, the dude came back from missing 2 weeks, 20 for 103 against 12 for 80 and 3 scores rather, against a really tough Detroit Lions run defense. So, Giants could be down early in this one. They're 6.5 road underdogs. Could just see a bunch of Kenneth Walker in this game.
Yeah, you could also see a lot of Zach Charbonnet too if they do jump out to that lead. You did pass over, and I'll look at the practice reports for Thursday and Friday for Joe Mixon. But if Joe Mixon's playing, you got to love him against Buffalo. I mean, this is Buffalo's run defense has been shredded now, giving up over 150 yards per game. I think they've given up like 7 rushing touchdowns on the season or something insane like that. I mean, they've been bad. So Mixon somebody who I'll take a look at as well. No doubt.
Some guys on the injury list, Etienne and Brian Robinson Jr., James Conner, who I usually like, again, kind of in a tougher spot against San Francisco. You mentioned Charbonnet. Pass game work for him, right? Super involved in the passing game. When he was out, he carried the workload against Miami perfectly fine there. So
I don't like where they have him priced, though. I think he's priced up too high.
Especially when Josh Jacobs is right there, right? Like, again, this is another situation where it's like, all right, if I'm not playing Love because I'm playing Geno Smith, I'll play Jacobs over Walker, right? And then if I'm playing Geno Smith, I'll play Jake, or flip it around, right? Like whatever quarterback I'm not going in the mid-tier, I'll just play the other team's running back because I think this is a really good spot for Josh Jacobs this week going up against the Rams. We just saw, again, DeAndre Swift just ran over that team. Roshan Johnson ran for a touchdown. So you can definitely move the ball on the ground against the Rams.
Yeah. I like Jacobs a lot. Singletary banged up. Oh, man. People begging on this Tyrone Tracy nonsense to me. I'll just say this. I have zero interest in Tyrone Tracy if Singletary's limited or doesn't play. Seattle's run defense is rock solid. Absolutely rock solid. I'm not going to buy into this. I get that the ranking here on DraftKings is mid-tier at best, but I think they've got a much better run defense in that sense, not to mention the fact that I think that this passing attack can game flow out any Giants running backs for sure. I like Chuba Hubbard. Okay. I mean, it's just a steady progression there. Dave Canales just loves running the football, and Hubbard's been absolutely, a star for the past couple of weeks. And he's working on borrowed time, right? He's running like it doesn't even matter because maybe Jonathan Brooks is coming back soon. Maybe he's not. They didn't open up the practice window for Jonathan Brooks this week. So, live to fight another day. Stevenson's an interesting one here because I think it's a great matchup. But when your head coach starts telling you that, he's considering benching you in favor of Antonio Gibson, I mean, I don't know if that's just to light a fire under Stevenson's ass or whatnot, but I'm not ready to commit down to Gibson at all. in this
Yeah.
matchup, but for the same token, it's definitely turning me off of Ramondre Stevenson.
So I think if we see ownership completely off Stevenson because of coach speak, I would be interested in playing him in tournaments, because what if it's just simply that? It's, yeah, Gibson starts and gets the first series, and then it's Stevenson, and Stevenson goes out there and just runs all over. New England Patriots are a home favorite this week. That's how bad Miami is playing right now. That the Patriots are actually a home favorite, given how poor they've looked. So I kind of think Stevenson in tournaments is fine, just because I think a lot of people are going to look at everything that's being said this week and not want to spend the money. And if he goes out and looks, like the old reminder Stevenson, you're going to get, 20, 100 in a score at no ownership. So I like that there. Obviously, you have Moss, who's been really consistent. If there's no ETN, Bigsby will be, a pretty popular option. I would think there. Mid-tier guys down here, Ford, Sermon. If there's no Taylor, I don't really like Sermon, but
yeah, I don't either. Like, there's the difference, right? There's the good chalk versus the bad chalk. If you don't like the player, like, don't play him just because he's going to get the start, because the starter is out. He's the backup for a reason, right? He's not. If he were that good, he'd be getting a bigger share of the workload in there. I feel like if Eckler plays, he could be a very interesting pass catching option here. Sure. I heard he's trending towards playing, which I think it works out well for him. I think that's a good spot against Cleveland.
I mean, after what Jeremy McNichols just did last week, right? Like, everybody's chipping at the bit to see if Eckler will play or not, because then there could be some value there with because if Robinson's banged up too. So Goodson's the other running back in Indy, not going to go there. Chase Brown, Truthers got their moment last week, 15 for 80 and 2 scores.
Yeah, I'm not buying that.
Okay.
I'm not buying that one at all. I do like Madison, and I'm intrigued by Javonte Williams. I think they're both in good spots this week. So if you are looking to pay down, I think that's definitely something to take a look at. I like Madison more on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings. I like Javonte more on DraftKings than I do on FanDuel.
Sure. Then Gibson is $5,100 if he does get the reports that he's a starter. He is catching the football, so they are throwing to him. So there is some value there. Anybody else?
Emmanuel Wilson, if you really want to throw a dart.
Sure.
He's still getting some work there and in as a complimentary back. But other than that, no, I think we've hit our Danny Mendick of football.
Shout out to those who watch the MLB.
If you know.
Wide receivers. Okay, Jamar Chase obviously broke off like the 60-yard touchdown last week. He had a big game the week before that against Washington. If you believe that he's ready to go and in the right mind, and Burrow and him are on the same page, can always play some Jamar Chase if you want. Again, really like Nico Collins up here at $7,700. Less enamored with Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously Neighbors is not going to play. Devontae Adams isn't going to be likely playing in that game. He's probably not going to be with the team. So it drops down to Metcalf, Diggs, Debo, like that whole tier. And I think those three guys there are perfectly fine this week.
Yeah, I definitely think that those guys are perfectly fine. Listen, you're not going to get me to not use DK Metcalf. I mean, I championed this guy all preseason. I said what was going to happen with him, and guess what? Guess what's happened with him? Yeah. Oh, everything that I said was going to happen with him has happened with him. So should have gotten into the end zone last week. They called that one back. That was bullshit.
Crazy stat. They said that Metcalf's 100-yard game was the first time in franchise history a receiver had 3 straight 100-yard games for Seattle, which just seems surprising to me. So anyways, good on Metcalf there. You have the Diggs revenge game. Debo, $6,800. Green Bay wide receivers will be popular. Jaden Reed, $6,500. Kind of the Debo mold there a little bit. Getting some carries, leading the team in targets last week and receptions. Again, good spot against the Rams. Great price tag. Now, we didn't talk to Deshaun Watson, but I do like Amari Cooper here against Washington because how bad Washington's secondary is.
I love Amari Cooper here.
Should have had that 80-yard touchdown. They called a holding on a guy that wasn't really anywhere near the play, which we always hate when the refs decide to do that. So liking Amari at $6,200 there in the mid-tier. Deontay Johnson, $6,100. Still getting a bunch of targets there from Dalton.
Love them.
Yeah.
Love them. I mean, that's the thing. Like the mid-tier wide receivers. I mean, I've got a list right here of like guys that I was putting together, for the watch list. It was like Flowers, Metcalf, Pittman, looking into Romeo Dobbs, Amari Cooper. Like these guys are the ones, who I'm happy to use. Brian Thomas Jr. I'm happy to use as well. 5,900. Like that's like, it's tough to pay up for a guy when you see so much great value in the mid tier.
I feel bad doing the playbook sometimes, Howard, because I want to list like all 12 guys in like the 65 to 55 range, right? Like, because they're all, I feel like most of them are mispriced. Like Michael Pittman this week, if Flacco's his quarterback, is not a 6K wide receiver, right? He's more of like a $6,800 type wide receiver. Brian Thomas has been great. JSN has a really great matchup. Christian Kirk has finally started to turn his season around the last 2 weeks, 19 and 16 fantasy points. He's not a 5,700. He's more of like a 65 guy. So like there's a lot of good value in that 65 to $5,500 range. I would play them all. For the most part, you mentioned Romeo Doubs, $5,400. I'm definitely in on some Doubs there as well. Judy at 52 against Washington. The targets
he's been seeing the targets for sure.
Yeah. So, and then, Downs, Wicks here at 51 and 5K, Tutu Atwell, been a monster lately, $4,900. Like there's so much value at wide receiver on this board.
Yeah. I mean, did you say Xavier Leggett?
I did not.
Yeah. See, there's another one that's kind of starting to pop a little bit. That might be a little on the intriguing side there, but yeah, man, listen, I think again, it's very, very tough. And, I'm like kind of playing around with a lineup here as we're going along with it. And it's like, how am I paying up at wide receiver when there's so much mid-tier value? Much mid-tier value.
I agree. Obviously, again, because there's only 10 game slate, we are also missing some of the big wide receivers that are generally on slates as well. So, like, there's a couple of spend ups, but for the most part, you don't need to spend up here. Even further down for value, Jordan Whittington, a guy you've called out during the preseason as like a sleeper, 6 catches, 8 targets, 62 yards, could be the next guy that kind of continues to sort of step up. Well, we all thought Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson. It's Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington, right? Keon Coleman finally starting to make some plays. Last week, 3 catches, 51 yards, had the touchdown the week before that. Got to see what else we have down here. Bateman has some deep play ability. Slayton, maybe, if there's no neighbors, right? Like, it'd be a guy that Daniel Jones looks to throw downfield to.
Yeah, he's possible. What about how about the Braxton Berrios revenge game, John?
Is he playing?
I'm just fucking with you on that one.
Is he a kick returner for that team?
Actually, looking further down here, I actually like Jalen Polk.
Yeah.
This week. I think that, I think Demario Douglas will probably see the majority of Jalen Ramsey. And Polk will end up getting freed up. I think, it's worth a GPP dive.
I clicked Kendrick Bourne because there's a chance he's been limited at practice. They designated him to return. We'll see, I guess, if New England decides to activate him or not for Sunday. Would be something to watch. But there's nothing else down here to really talk about. Tight end, I thought kind of sucked this week.
Yeah.
If McBride is against San Francisco at top price coming off concussion, not really there for me. Bowers against Denver. I know you've generally liked to play tight ends versus Denver in the past. He's 55. Kincaid.
Bowers and Kincaid are the two guys. Like Kincaid, I've already got him in the contrarian video because everybody's, nobody's paying up for tight end right now.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying up for tight end. And Kincaid's got 8 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown over his last 2 games.
Yep.
And, and Houston is giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to the tight end position at this point right now. It's not, huge, overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And, it still needs to level off, but that's just definitely something to take a look at. But if I'm looking at tight end right now for this week, I'm trying to pay down. Yeah. Right, I'm looking at Zach Ertz maybe as a possibility against Cleveland.
Sure.
Tucker Kraft is going to be pretty chalky at 3,500 because everybody's going to chase those 9 targets again.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if they're going to give you that free square, then take that free square.
Yeah, you're currently projected top roster tight ends Kittle. If Ingram is active, I'd probably just find a way to push him in there at 46. Because there really isn't. Obviously, I think we're probably hoping that Ingram is inactive so we can just play Brenton Strange again at $3,200. He didn't wow you 3 for 19, but at this point, the state of the tight end, you get 5 fantasy points. You're doing pretty good. Considering Mark Andrews has 0 catches and 2 targets over the last.
It's like the most depressing thing in the world.
Yep.
It really is.
For defense, I've just been playing the Broncos. Home versus the Raiders, who are falling apart. Denver's defense has been really good. They're getting after the quarterback. They're not allowing a lot of points. I mean, there's a lot to like about Denver here, and they're only $2,900.
Yeah, I like them. But, I was also eyeballing the Patriots as well as just a possibility just because of Miami's struggles. But I definitely prefer the Broncos if we're gonna try and sneak that in there. I think there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Okay. Anything else? Defense? I mean, I know we didn't talk about a lot, but that's just, to me, they just make the most sense. I mean,
they do, and I'm fine with just making sense, right? It doesn't need to be this crazy game breaker.
The Seahawks against the Giants would be the other team home again, right?
Yes.
But I don't think we need to go much more into that. You got a lineup, you said?
I have been playing around with a little bit of a lineup here. Here you go. Well, let's get your boy Gino in there because he's your top guy.
Okay, so Gino Metcalf then.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, wait a sec. Throw in Derrick Henry.
Okay.
And yes, you got Metcalf in there. Beautiful.
Yep.
Throw Cooper in there and throw Romeo Doubs in there too.
Cooper, Doubs. Are we using Broncos D?
Let's use the Broncos D. Sure.
Okay.
I wanted to screw around with my second running back is really where it came down to.
What was your tight end? Ertz?
No, I threw Tucker Kraft in there. I mean, if it's going to be a free square, it's going to be a free square.
Okay.
And then that leaves us, our second running back in our flex position. I mean, I'll just say that Gino and Metcalf love it. Absolutely. Henry, you love him too. Cooper, we both love. Doubs, I think, is while everybody's going to play Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, Doubs still leads the all wide receivers in snaps, and he's second on the team in targets right now. And the only reason he's not first is because Dontavian Wicks got those 13 targets last week.
Yeah. Can we get Mason? It'll be a $3,900 flex.
Then get yourself some Jalen Polk in there, baby.
I was going to say, we definitely had a $3,900. It was Slayton. Get the comeback for Seattle.
Little correlation there. Some Darius Slayton.
Yeah.
So grimy. But there it is.
There you go. Geno Smith, Derrick Henry, Jordan Mason, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft, Darius Slayton, the Denver Broncos defense for everybody.
We need a different. I don't want to stack Dobbs and Kraft. Right.
All right, let's go. Do we have Ertz money? 35.
I think Ertz is 38.
All right, we can go off Doubs and go Kraft then. Easier to fit a wide receiver in there.
Probably.
Kraft.
I'll tell you, I like Doubs.
Wide receiver 54 would be Judy. Oh, we got Amari already. Downs.
Downs or Leggett. Either way.
I'm good with Downs. Smith, Henry, Mason, Metcalf, Cooper, Downs, Kraft, Slayton, and Broncos defense for everybody. Again, example lineup. We'll have the example lineups out on Sunday. We'll have the playbook out on Friday or today, whatever day you're watching this on. We'll have the live streams. Love you already. Go listen to Coop and Bender Sunday morning on Sirius XM. Come back here on the Fantasy on YouTube at 11 for Coop and I to get your lineups set for Sunday. Until then, everybody, you know where to find us in the Discord. Get us on Twitter. We'll catch you later.